Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 363 to 364 for the 21st to the 22nd of February. Let's start off with the biggest news that just came out today. Just came out. The Russian Ministry of Defense posted an information alleging that Ukraine is planning to plot a provocation against the Padnestovian Moldovan Republic, basically Transnistria, in the near future, which they will be carried out by the Ukrainian troops, including Azov troops, which they will then. So the plot, this conspiracy is about them, the Ukrainians, using their troops to pretend as Russian troops, and then they operate within Transnistria or Moldova, and then by doing that, they can use this as a casus belli or something, as an excuse to invade into Transnistria. And the reason Transnistria is so important is because of this. This ammo depot represents one of the biggest ammo depot from the Soviet era. There is a lot of ammunition and shells and whatnot in this ammo depot. And Ukrainians is running out of ammunition and running out of shells, and this will be extremely pivotal for the Ukrainians to get, should they really want to continue to use their Soviet weapons. So this is what is happening. I'm not sure whether how legit is this. I have been seeing the rumors for the past 2 days. I do not plan to talk about it because usually this kind of thing don't happen, but because the Russian MOD have put out an official statement about this, so I have to talk about this. And for me, it's plausible that the Ukrainians really want these things, really want this. They really want this. The problem is, would they dare to do it, and will they actually do it? It will actually drag Moldova into the war. And Russia will defend Transnistria, the badly drawn banana over here. So we shall see how this goes. And another big and weird, also some sort of a conspiracy, is that there is some explosions reported at Mariupol. And according to a pro-Russian source, which I can't read this, Neofishionny Bizozonov, whatever it is, they reported that based on their own intelligence, that the Ukrainians actually received 12 HIMARS system, and they are equipped with long-range missiles up to 150 kilometers. So this is actually the missiles that is not supposedly allowed to be given to the Ukrainians. So, and Russian army, another pro-Russian source, then reported about the explosion in Mariupol, and they are confident that this explosion is caused by the usage of these HIMARS new systems, which are able to fire up to 150 kilometers in range. Based on these pro-Russian sources, they claim that the reason why they think it is these new missiles is because Mariupol has not been under shelling for a long time. The Ukrainians have not been able to hit Mariupol at all for a very, very long time. So the fact that they can hit them now suggests that it might be these HIMARS. But I actually do not think that's reality, because it's merely 80 kilometers from the front line. And I believe they do have possible abilities to actually hit Mariupol. And another pro-Russian source that I read talk about drones. So it could also be drones that hit Mariupol. So I would just want to highlight this, that there's some possibility. This is some rumors, but don't take it too seriously. And over at Kherson, just south of Mykolaiv, is yet another kind of conspiracy-ish, but this is not conspiracy. This is actually real. There is photo evidence for this. Eyewitnesses has reported that the Ukrainians are transporting some kind of naval craft. So it's pretty large. They have to use a large truck to actually transport this naval vehicle. It looks like a patrol boat of sorts, and it was spotted in Alexandrivka, and then it was tracked to continue to move on the highway all the way to Antonivka. So this was the endpoint for this vehicle. Perhaps they're going to put it in some of the port here. I'm not sure where would they have dropped this thing. Yeah, I'm not too sure where they would have dropped this. Yeah, maybe here. Maybe they can drop it here, but not sure exactly. But that is the endpoint for this vehicle. They tracked all the way. So the pro-Russian sources managed to track all the way to the endpoint. So, which means that the Ukrainians are likely to continue to launch amphibious assault across the Dnipro River over at this Kherson region. This is coming right after we have information of reinforcement coming on the 19th of mercenaries ranging 500 to 1,000, and also territorial defense forces that came over as well. So so likely to flare up again, the front line over at Kherson. So let's move on to the other fronts. Zaporizhia line, we do not have any information of any fighting over at Zaporizhia region. Moving on to the Donetsk Front. So this is Donetsk region. At the Donetsk Front, we have is this outdated? Let me see. Oh, there is reinforcement reported at Bakhmut. Bohatir or Bohatir. Anyway, there is HIMARS system reported have arrived over at Bakhmut, and this is reportedly, according to Ryba, the pro-Russian source, armed with the 150 kilometers long-range missile. So I'm not sure if this is related to the explosions in Mariupol, which other pro-Russian sources, which is not Ryba, allege that it's actually coming from a HIMARS system. And like I said, if it's from here, the distance to Mariupol is around 112 kilometers. It's within range of the 150 kilometers of the missile, but is out of range for the missiles that the Ukrainians previously gotten, which is only 80 kilometers in range. So so believe whatever you want to believe. And over at the Vuhledar region, there is fighting reported at Transnistria, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, on the 22nd, which is yesterday, and shelling was reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. So maybe this fighting, this unsuccessful offensive is actually just shelling, or the Russians just say it's shelling, but they actually went on a ground offensive. Not sure. Moving on to Vuhledar region here. At Vuhledar. So I have done update regarding the situation here at Vuhledar. You can actually go and watch it. So according to Ryba, they actually corroborated the Surya Maps information about the Ukrainian offensive that actually go all the way to the dachas between Mikilske and Berkhivka. So what happens is that Ryba actually acknowledged this attack. However, they say that they still have a presence here. The Russian forces still have a presence here in the dachas east of Vuhledar, and they are still trying to hold this position, but they're stuck at this moment, and they're trying to move in this direction towards the South Donbass mine, coal mine. So see what you want to believe. Again, and then there is, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, they simply reported shelling at Vuhledar on the 22nd. No mentions of Vuhledar on the 21st. Fighting is reported near Berkhivka as well, because the Ukrainians, according to the Ukrainians, the front line is now here. The pro-Ukrainian sources, the front line is now here. During the counter-offensive that reached all the way to the dacha, they actually also counter-attacked the Russian forces and caused the Russians to actually withdraw over the river towards into Berkhivka itself. So as you can see, there's actually a river here. So this is the river that I mentioned, that the Russian forces actually withdraw back into the town, away from this more open ground that is just southwest of Vuhledar. Moving on at Marinka. So now we are on the western part of Donetsk city. At Marinka, there is fighting reported at Marinka according to Ryba and Deep State UA, the pro-Russian and pro-Ukrainian source, reporting the same attack on the 21st. The fighting is mainly in the city center in the Druzhby Avenue, and the fighting continued to be reported on the 22nd by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. Moving on into the Avdiivka region. So in the Avdiivka region, there is fighting reported at Nevelsky, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. They also dropped the name of Vodian in the same statement. Fighting on the 21st. So this information is the 22nd, but on the 21st, the information actually comes from Surya Maps and Deep State UA. So according to them, the front line is actually here. This is the front line, and the Russian forces are currently attacking from the south of Vodian towards Pervomaisky. So the front line at Pervomaisky is actually here, according to them, and the Russians are currently stuck here. So our mapping is actually here. So this is based on previous reports from pro-Russian sources. So I'm not sure which one is the real one, because we previously did receive report that the Russians have already reached around this region. So yeah, fog of war. So just believe whatever you want. Moving on, in the north of Avdiivka city, at Novobakhmutivka, we have fighting reported here. Deep State UA reported that the Russian forces attacked in the region of Novobakhmutivka. They do not have intel of this region, and the Ukrainian Defense Ministry actually reported this offensive on the 22nd, which is in this morning's report. So I suppose they are attacking this way. Then I saw this very interesting statement coming from War Gonzo. So War Gonzo's report yesterday, reporting on the things that happened on the 21st, is that there was an attack in the area of Kreminna or Keramik. Keramik is actually a bit of a distance away. We are talking about like 5 kilometers away, and to really say that it's in the area, I have to put like maybe around here, around the road, which means that the Russian forces have already taken all this region. They have captured all this region, and they are now pushing towards Keramik. And it really depends on whether this is true or not. I'm really not sure, how, based on interpretation, this attacks, this fighting reported at Novobakhmutivka might actually be this fighting towards Keramik. So maybe the fighting is still on this eastern part of this road. The Russians are currently maybe moving at this part of the road. The road is still here. And so maybe the Ukrainian side still feel that it's part of Novobakhmutivka. But to War Gonzo is already moving towards Keramik. So maybe that's the case. Okay, so moving on away from the Avdiivka, the New York Front, we do not have any reports of any fighting around this region. And moving on to the Bakhmut Front, we're still in the Donetsk region. At the Bakhmut Front, we have fighting reported in the area of Kurdyomivka, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, for the 21st of February's report. 22nd's report, but it's reporting on the 21st. The situation on the western part of Bakhmut city, the Ukrainian forces launched a counteroffensive, and they have taken control over of this highway region. They push and force the Russian forces allegedly to this line. This happened on the 21st. So what happens since is that so the information was very specific, and it was actually reported by Ryba that the Wagner private military contractors are pushed back to 3 kilometers southwest of Krasnoye, which is actually Ivanivsky. So 3 kilometers is around here. So which is why the front line is actually drawn around here. And but since then, the information coming from Ryba in their latest information suggests that the Wagner forces have partially regained control of previously lost position near the probably they say on the highway, but I don't think it's on. I think it's near. Even their mapping did not put it as on, and they are approaching the outskirts of Krasnoye, which is Ivanivsky, from the southeastern part, which means the Russians have now launched a counteroffensive back against the Ukrainian forces. Now they are moving up towards Ivanivsky, and they are now pushing towards the highway again. So situation is very fluid. So if you see some certain information, it seems like outdated, is actually because the information on the situation that is developing on the ground is actually really fast. Because the fighting here is predominantly the Wagner forces, and the Wagner forces fight very fiercely. So they withdraw. Now they're fighting back. Predictable in terms of how Wagner fight, because they don't seem to care so much about their lives. Moving on to the Bakhmut city itself. At the Bakhmut city, we have latest information coming from SITREP maps that this information is also reported by Ryba actually, that the Russian forces has now entered into this forest region, which is east of this former Soviet era army depot. So you can see this is actually an army depot, and it's actually pretty flattened now. So this is no longer operating now, and the Russian forces have entered into this region here, and also on the southern part of Bakhmut city, there is a geolocation by Chris759, one of the top, if not the world best geolocator that I know, on Twitter. He reported of this geolocation. So in the video, there was a Ukrainian BMP driving down and started spraying this entire region, spraying this entire area with shells, which actually flew pretty far. It actually flew all the way to here. Yeah, it actually flew very far, the shells. So anyway, because of this geolocation, this actually shows that the front line is actually around this area here. And SITREP maps also reported that the fighting is now at the Hoholia Street. So Hoholia Street is actually here. The word didn't want to come out. So yeah, but this road here is actually Hoholia Street. So the fighting is now in this area here now. Moving on the eastern side, according to information from SITREP maps, there was a video footage showing that the Russian forces have blown up this bridge. So this is I would say more or less the last bridge I know of. Well, there's another one here, but this is a dam. So there is already two bridges that was previously we have detailed to have blown up. One in September 22nd, and another one is actually in August. So you can see that Bakhmut has been under siege for a really long time. So now we have this final bridge here that is actually now being blown up, but this time around is by the Russian forces, which most likely is just a Wagner forces. So on the eastern side, there is a counter-offensive by the deep state UA attacking on the eastern side. However, that is 21st. On the 22nd, the fighting is now reported at Vototina Street, which is Vototina Lane. Around this region here, there's fighting. And also that there is a breakthrough of sorts with the Russian forces penetrating all the way to Shishdra Street, which is actually here. Shishedra Street. So the Russian forces now pushing into this direction, and let's see whether they can hold this position, because it's actually really hard to hold positions within this area here. There's also a geolocation of Ukrainian forces on the roof of sort or something of this building, and they actually fire ATGM, anti-tank guided missile, at this house here. So which actually help us to geolocate that the Russian forces is actually at this house, and which means that the area here around the house is likely to be under Russian control, and the Ukrainians are actually still holding positions around here. So this helped to confirm that our front line is more or less there, and we managed to push back the Ukrainian front line a little bit to reflect this information here. Moving on to the northeast, we have fighting reported over at Zarishna Street according to SITREP maps, which is actually around here. So the Russian forces continue to push in the south into the northeast area here, and there is fighting reported at Bakhmut itself according to Ukrainian Defense Ministry. Ukrainian Defense Ministry do not give details, so this is all they will say. And we are moving on to the northern part of Bakhmut. So the first thing first is that there is reports of fighting near the non-forest metal plant, which is actually here. So I have put it to blue because this, according to the report from Ryba, the pro-Russian source, they say that the Ukrainian forces have entrenched themselves within this plant. And this plant looks very familiar to some, don't you think? It looks very familiar to something that we know. Yes, the Azovstal plant in Mariupol. And in fact, they are of the same design, and there is also underground tunnels within this this industrial plant. And as a result, is complicating the assault along this region, because the Ukrainians can actually traverse around very easily. This is a huge plant. Just imagine how big is a human on this map. Yeah, you can see how huge the plant is. So it's going to be another Azov-style episode. We shall see. We are not sure, but I personally not too sure if they actually reached this far. But this reported by Ryba, so we're going to just map it in. And in the north, situation is dire for the Ukrainian forces. So the Ukrainian forces on the 21st launched a counter-offensive in the area of Yakhidne. They're trying to push back the Russian forces, the Wagner groups. However, this did not sustain very long. The Russian forces continue their attack, and they continue to push the Ukrainians. So far, the Ukrainians are trying to hold a very strong line here. They are continuing to push. So the fiercest fighting is now mainly fought in the Yakhidne region. But in the Berkhivka region, thing went to shit. So before I go to there is an entrenched Russian position here. The Russians actually take out this road by entrenching themselves there. So there is a loss of communications between the Ukrainian forces in the Yakhidne region and the Berkhivka region. Then on the 21st, we have reports of Russian forces attacking from the north and the east. And by the end of the day, the fighting have entered into Berkhivka itself. By today, the information is that most of Berkhivka is now under Russian control. They have captured most of Berkhivka, and so fighting is reported in the southern outskirts of Berkhivka as well as the western outskirts of Berkhivka, with fighting at Berkhivka mostly finished with the Russian forces capturing most of Berkhivka. This is reported by Surya Maps, Deep State UA, and Ryba. Which means we have all neutral, pro-Russian, pro-Ukrainian, all reporting the exact same thing, that Berkhivka is on the verge of falling to the Russians. So this information is definitely as good as it can get. Fighting is also reported towards Dubovo-Vasilivka. Ryba first reported on the 21st that fighting is moving towards Dubovo-Vasilivka. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry actually reported, in a weird change of format of the way how they do their reporting, in their evening report, that they reported that the Russians are actually attacking their positions of Ukrainian troops at Orikhovo-Vasilivka, Dubovo-Vasilivka, Berkhivka, Yakhidne, and in this location, which is actually not near the front line, probably is bombardment, and Bakhmut. Orikhovo-Vasilivka in task is now also under attack, which means that in the grand scale of things, you can see that the Russians are actually pushing in all these directions. So in the north of Bakhmut, so things are looking rather bad for the Ukrainian side. Reinforcement is reported at Minkivka. So Minkivka is actually a forward operating base for the Ukrainians, and there is reinforcement being reported here, according to the pro-Russian source, Ryba. And I thought I talked about this already. Okay, moving on to the Siversk Front. So at the Siversk Front, we have fighting reported at Fedorivka on the 21st, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, and also at Rozdolivka. Vasily, there's reported fighting according to Ryba, the pro-Russian source, where they say that the Russian forces has overcome some of these strongholds of the 10 separate don't know what brigade, and then the Surya Maps also reported that there is some advancement of the Russian lines in this area here. The Russians managed to push further towards Vasily. So this is what happening around the Berkhivka Vasily region. At Spurny, the fighting is reported near this gas compressor station. The Ukrainians entrenched themselves there, and they're still there. The Russians still have not been able to capture it. And reportedly, the attack is hampered by huge networks of trenches and underground communications by the Ukrainian side. So underground communications, I'm not too sure what exactly that's supposed to mean. And there is actually a military base here, in case you do not know. So maybe that's the reason, because of the military base over there. Moving on to Berkhivka, the Ukrainian forces managed to push out the Russians entirely from Berkhivka on the 21st. But then Wogonzo reported that the Russians are still trying to attack Berkhivka. So there is a clash of information. But from what we understand, the Ukrainian forces have pushed the Russians entirely out of Berkhivka. So, but this information might be one day late, maybe because of the geolocation that we have by Deep State UA on the 20th. This information is on the 21st by Surya Map, so maybe Surya Map is catching up on the information. So maybe on the 21st, that what actually happened is the Russians actually tried a counter-offensive or a counter-attack against Berkhivka. So moving on to the Kreminna Front. The Kreminna Front fighting is reported near Kreminna by Deep State UA within the forestry region, and then there is a geolocation by Deep State UA of a Russian attack in this position. So, which means that the front line is here, because the Russian attack is there. So, which means the front line we have mapped is actually more or less correct. Fighting is still reported at near Dibrova, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 21st of February. Moving further up north, fighting is reported at Yampolivka, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. The attack, this is reported yesterday, and fighting is also reported at Nevsky on the 21st and on the 22nd, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. And fighting is reported near Ploschanka, according to Deep State UA on the 21st, which means that the Kreminna offensive is still ongoing, with the Russians attacking in multiple directions here. And they are still trying to push the Ukrainians out of this region here. The Ukrainians are holding strong. So moving on, in the Svatove region, fighting is reported at Berkhivka, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, and there is also fighting reported at Novoselivsky, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. However, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry did not drop the name of Novoselivsky. They actually dropped the name of Kuzemivka, which suggests that the front line actually moved forward, at least maybe not entirely, but actually maybe around here. Maybe they are very close to Kuzemivka. And so really not too sure. Maybe the Russians are now counter-attacking and they call it Novoselivsky. Perhaps. Not sure exactly what's the reality. But just know that there is fighting around this area, because basically they are more or less almost the same town. So moving on to the Kupyansk Front. At the Kupyansk Front, there is fighting reported at Masyutivka, according to Wogonzo on the 21st, and the Russian Defense Ministry on the 22nd continue to report the fighting at Masyutivka. Interestingly is that we do not have any reports of fighting at Kreminna, which means that the Russian forces have managed to push out further, and the fighting is mainly, let me draw nearer. So the front line probably have already moved further forward, which means that the fighting is now in the area of Masyutivka, which is why we no longer hear the name of Kreminna anymore. I think that is the probability of what is happening. And over at the Kharkiv region. So we are now in the Kharkiv region, which is still part of the Kupyansk Front over here. Interestingly, as I mentioned about the Ukrainian Defense Ministry's evening report, have a change of format. Maybe the person who write the report is a different person. There is information about the Russians trying to infiltrate by recon or raiding forces, or DRGs, into the Vuhledar region. So, which means that the Russians have managed to cross the river over here somehow and move towards Vuhledar. And this is not just the only report of this incident. There's also another incident over at Berkhivka. Sorry, Berkhivka, my spelling here is wrong here. That there is also recon forces reported at this region here in the border of Russian-Ukrainian border. and reportedly the Ukrainians fired at them, and the Russian forces retreat back to Russia. And this could be the first signal of what might be coming, because usually recon forces is sent out to scout out where exactly the defense line is, and whether is it defended. And the good thing is for the Ukrainians is that they indeed have defenses around here and around here, even though this is not exactly where the main fighting is, which means that the Ukrainians got the lines covered, but the Russians are probing, and it might actually be a sense of what might to come. Maybe a bigger attack might be coming in this region here. So let's see how this goes. And that's all for the summary for the day of 363 to 364 for the 21st or 22nd of February. As you can see, 364 days, that's one more day to the last day of 1 year. And I have been covering this war for 364 days now. So it's actually quite a sad milestone, because ultimately every day there is fighting, someone dies, someone's family member die, someone lose their son, their brother, their father. So it's not a good thing. Yeah, so this is actually nothing to celebrate about. It's something to commemorate, and but it's something we have to be mindful of. Don't celebrate. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next update.